Monday, January 22nd, Board of Public Works and Safety. We are streaming the meeting live, recording it in archives for later viewing. Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Good morning. Mr. Carlo?
Here.
Mayor Courtney?
Here.
Mr. Eaglin?
We have quite a few guests today. Thank you for being here. Board, if you had an opportunity to look at the minutes from January the 10th, so we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I reviewed the minutes and I approve the minutes as read.
I'll second Carl's motion.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, moving on to claims.
Mayor had an opportunity to review the claims. This morning, we had claim docket of 27 pages, consisting of $2,002,074.89. And I'll make a motion that the claims be approved as submitted.
I'll second David.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, moving on to new business. Brian, you're here for SRF disbursements 52 and 53.
Yes, sir. As you said, it's disbursements 52 and 53. SRF request number 52 is for Brackney. It's for the Water Main Replacements Division C. It's dated January 15th. The total amount of the invoice is $220,073. The retainage amount will be $11,004, and the amount of the SRF disbursement request will be $209,069. I put some extra notes on there. So far, the retainage we have for Brackney is around $251,000. The total project amount that we've paid out so far is a little over $5 million, and they only have $342 is their balance to finish, excluding the retainage. So they're pretty much finished with the project. We're meeting today to see about the punch list and the substantial completion, because I'm pretty sure we'll have to do a document for that to be approved here. And then from the date of substantial completion, you'll have a year of warranty.
So you're having a meeting today with regards to punch list? Was
Well,
that part of
we'll cover
the
that.
weekly-
Yeah.
You will cover that?
Yeah,
Okay.
we have a meeting. I have 3 meetings today for all the 3 divisions, and
Okay.
we'll cover all those things. So I'll know more after that meeting. And then the next request is number 53 for Dave O'Meara Contracting, dated January 8th. The total amount of their invoice was $87,752. Their retainage amount was $4,388. And the SRF disbursement request was $83,365. And as I did above, the amount of retainage they have thus far is $126,900. Their project amount, total project amount, was $4.5 million plus or minus, and they've only completed $2 million. So they've still got they're only about halfway done. But we knew that, and that's one of the things we're talking about today. They're still waiting on some materials to come in, but that one we expected to take longer than originally planned. And then I went ahead and put a note about Division B. That their retainage amount thus date, even though I don't have a claim for them, is $64,000, and their total project amount was $1.6 million, and they have about $318,000 to finish. And we're going to discuss today Division B. That's the one with the tank, the east tank up there that needs work. That's one of the things we're going to discuss today. We may pull that out of the project and just rebid it. The engineer thinks we might get a better price, because there's a lot of stipulations when you do things through the SRF. Davis Bacon wages being one of them. So he's thinking, based on what cost they're coming in at, we might be better to just pull that out and bid that separately. That's all I got. We got to approve those 2 SRF requests.
All right, it looks like progress has gone pretty well on all 3 divisions, Canada.
Right, yeah, except for O'Meara, but we knew
Yeah.
from the get-go that they were behind, and based on the material quote they were waiting on.
Okay.
When will paving in some of those neighborhoods, when will that start?
Which the paving's all done.
Well,
The resurfacing of all the neighborhoods that had the water
Okay,
project.
yeah,
So
that's a
part of
different thing, yeah.
Okay.
That's part of a community crossing grant, and I believe 4 of the 5 neighborhoods are actually slated for our spring. Yeah, being bid now.
Mean bid now.
So in
Yeah,
the
that's a
spring,
better
when the
Mindy
asphalt
question.
plants, in spring, when the asphalt plants reopen, that will be, our project, plus all the downtown paving that was part of that as well. And then another phase will include, Flint Street,
Yes,
which will take care of all 5 of those neighborhoods where we did
Yeah.
the, excavation for the,
and
the
Flint
new lines.
is concreted now. It's
Yep.
it's in decent shape. So,
Yes.
and they have fixed that intersection of Hillcrest and in front of the.
Oh, they have? Oh, I'll have
Yes,
to get up there.
they've concreted it. Yeah, they did it a week or two ago.
Perfect.
But so that's, and the golf course obviously is finished too.
Yeah.
So, but
Well, I move that we approve SRF disbursements 52 and 53 as requested.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Brian. Brian, I may ask you real quickly, though, with the frigid temperatures, have we had any major issues across the city?
we probably will be getting some leak requests for adjustments now. If they don't pass a certain threshold, you guys will never see them.
Okay.
But I have a feeling we have several breaks, and the people just haven't got their bills yet to realize it.
Okay. And with regard to the animal shelter, any update on
No,
that?
they still don't have water. It gets above thawing temperatures, we'll know.
So it should,
We'll know whether it's a break
better
or
this
whether
week,
it's
yeah.
actually a frozen line.
okay,
Yeah, it's gotta warm up some, but
okay. All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor McGee, are you here to work with our friends at Gardner relative to the insurance renewal?
I am. It is time for our annual insurance renewal, and as always, it happens just before renewal date, so we wanted to bring it to you, talk through it, and get your approval to move forward. So I'm going to introduce Greg Goodnight from Gardner, who can talk about it a little better than I, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good morning, Greg.
All right, good morning. We'll pass these around.
It's 42. Okay, and
Thank you.
probably have a copy of what you just handed us. Did you put this on there just for me,
I did, yes.
Bob the Smile Maker?
Yeah,
I
my
hear that.
grandfather and you.
I hear
Two
that all.
Bobs.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah, it gets a little bit of conversation. It used to have a
Uncle Bob.
cigar on it, for whatever that's worth, but we thought it best to remove it. So he was a cigar smoker. my
Yeah.
grandfather. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
So renewal for the policies is 124, as many alluded to. It's kind of a product. We're always in a similar position with timing. 1/1 is one of the biggest public entity renewal dates that there is. It's about 55% of the market. So it strains the industry as far as hitting that date. So typically the city is kind of falls in that realm of after those 1/1s is when we get some time, or the underwriters do. We're working on it back in October, but that doesn't mean what we do translates to getting there sooner. So a little bit about this year's marketing before we kind of dive into proposals. So the public entity market space and the industry as a whole is in a very historically hard market, both property and liability. It's being driven primarily by the reinsurance marketplace, which is kind of the top of the waterfall, so to speak. So the insurance companies that provide insurance to insurance companies is what I'm talking about there. So the high dollar claims, both liability and property, have taken a big impact as a result of that. I've also included in your packet, outside the proposal, which you've already received, is an application as well as a premium summary. I think that's good to kind of bring that back out each year as well. It goes back to 14-15, so it does show kind of the history of the account. Of course, at the bottom is where you find the two proposals that are being offered today.
I'm sorry. What was that last document you just mentioned?
It's
Oh.
it's gonna look like this.
What page is that on?
It should be on its own. in the-
It's,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you said there was a comparison here. Oh, okay. Okay, that is the comparison. Gotcha.
Yep. So it just kind of runs through the carriers
Yeah.
back, let's see, 1, 2, 3, potentially 4 carriers here back to 2014-15. So we've marketed this account the last 6-7 years pretty heavily. That's uncommon. Typically you find a 3 to 5 year. And historically, there's nothing historical anymore. It's everything is different. So you can kind of see where the activity began. Something happened around 2020. But prior to that, we were starting to see the market change quite a bit. So our goal is to retain coverage at the highest level for the city to protect it, but also at a pricing that's of good value, service, etc. So the two, if we want to kind of move past that, I don't want to unless do you have any questions on the premium summary? You'll see two offers in yellow down at the bottom. Expiring company, Liberty Mutual is offered, as well as a new option for this year. Any questions on that? Okay. So if we go to the proposal, which is a large packet. So looking at Liberty Mutual, they took a substantial increase. They've had you for 1 year. Prior to that was with property carrier Chubb. Intact One Beacon was a liability carrier, which they are now no longer in the public entity space. So Liberty Mutual has come in. They've done a nice job this first year. My recommendation is going to be the Trident Chubb option. Trident would be the liability carrier. Chubb would be the property carrier. Chubb, of course, has insured the risk for many years with 1 year of an absence. So they had the property for 2, 4, 6, 8 years until last year. So they have come back in and offered property coverage. So what I was hoping to do with the vast difference in pricing was kind of really focus on the Trident and Chubb option and then kind of identify some of the differences from the expiring, if that's agreeable.
Please do.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to take you to page 8 of the proposal. That's where you're going to find the Chubb property option, option 2, as it states in the proposal. So the city has kind of invested in asset reports for the last, intermittently for the last several years. And my understanding is that is still ongoing. So of course, whenever we receive that, we kind of pair that up with your schedules and make any necessary adjustments to the blanket. So one of the benefits here with Chubb in coverage form is on the business income at $750,000. I note that because it actually includes extra expense in that coverage, which is where the city's exposure primarily lies. You're limited to $100,000 currently with Liberty, so that would be an enhancement. Earthquake coverage, city does carry earthquake. It would take a $50,000 deductible versus the $100,000 that's currently on the policy. This might be one of the bigger enhancements. It's one that we kind of have always had for the city until Liberty wrote it last year. It's the ordinance or law coverage. So that is to protect the city from City Hall fire, where ordinance and law has to be re-permitted. We need sprinklers, we need new elevator shafts, things of that nature. Those are typically very high dollar increases at time of loss that you could incur. So the city had $7 million last year, but prior to that had policy limit. Policy limit meaning the blanket, which is the $65 million number at the top. Okay, so this is going to take that back to policy limit. So there's only 2 carriers I'm familiar with that offer policy limit in today's market. So that's a big. I'm happy to get that back for the city. Those are the main differences. If we go to page 9.
Greg, can I ask you a quick question while
Yes,
we're
sir.
on this page, and that is, if you had a multi-property casualty in the same event, does it fall under one deductible?
Yes, it would be on an occurrence form.
Occurrence, okay.
Any other questions on page 8? City carries earthquake, as I mentioned. There's a custom mark and flood coverage that is also included. It's excess. It could be excess, could be primary, depends on. The city does carry some National Flood Insurance Program qualified proposals on certain locations, such as Crystal Beach, such as Brown Gym, and so forth. This would then become excess above and beyond what is carried on each one of those locations specifically. So you can see how they break it down by hazard level on page 9, and pretty much page 9, and that's going to list the excess limits, deductibles, and waiting periods for that flood coverage.
And what's the difference on the waiting periods?
So when you can start obtaining, that's how long you have to wait before they will pay
Oh, okay.
for the loss. And you can see how it's by risk level is where they distinguish the different limits, deductibles, and waiting periods by location.
I'm confused. So, for example, a 72-hour waiting period has a $500,000 deductible
Correct.
compared to a 24-hour waiting period? So maybe
Correct.
explain the difference there again?
So when you look at the addresses, they're basing that, Chubb actually invests in their own mapping of the flood zone, so they don't utilize NFIP. And the reason that they've invested in that is because they incurred some rather large flood losses in Columbus, Indiana, as one example. And so they've invested in, they map each one of these locations, which dictates which flood hazard level they put that location in. So essentially, if you look at, let's just look at the very top line there, that 1,000 East Vaughn Drive, for example, there's a limit of 5 million, a deductible would be incurred of 100,000, and there'd be a 48-hour waiting period before they would pay on that if that property were impacted by a flood. So again, this would be excess above and beyond any other policy in place through the NFIP, which again, the city carries on many properties.
Does the waiting period dictating in any way the amount of damage that was incurred in the actual casualty?
No, it's,
Or we're just saying, hey, we'll give you a check in 3 days instead of 1 day, or one day
Right.
instead of 3 days?
correct, because if you have, this is really, I look at any flood coverage that's on your commercial package, which you have with Liberty currently as well, is really catastrophic flood protection.
Yeah.
I'd always advise that NFIP is where, again, it's primary, but that's where, you're gonna have a much lower deductible, depending on what's purchased. So yeah, you're right, they're understanding that these higher risk are gonna be a much bigger event. They might be there for 3 or 4 days, right, as the flood is receding and the damage is then being assessed. So typically these low flood, and we've seen an event 2 years ago now where hilltop areas were affected that have never been. They're more localized flooding events versus we all think about the river, of
Yep.
course, and rightfully so. So again, you can see a lot of these addresses fall on the hilltop, for example. So they fall, and then if it's not listed, as you can see at the bottom, it's at the $25,000 deductible limit of $5 million, and that takes a 24-hour waiting period. So those are typically much smaller events based upon the hazard level they fall into.
So it's not an either a 24 or 48 or 72, it's all three in this particular?
It's location specific. So the locations that are listed under each one is where you're gonna have the 48, the 72, or the 24. So again, if it's not listed in those top two sections as the address and it's on the property schedule and insured and owned by the city, it would fall under the bottom 24-hour waiting period. Does that answer your question?
I still don't understand the waiting period, candidly, you know?
I don't
Yeah.
know if I can help. I think, so they've created their own map, so they've put, addresses that are least likely to flood in this 72-hour waiting period, I believe.
Those are the highest.
Okay, so those are the highest.
Yeah.
The most likely to flood would be in the highest 72-hour waiting period, and then it goes from there on forward. So if a property floods in that zone, we'll call
Okay.
it, then it's gonna fall under one of these three requirements as to when they would get paid.
That's correct. And they all carry the $5 million property limit. It's the deductible and the waiting period that changes based upon the flood risk level. So at the top being the moderate hazard, the middle being the high hazard, at the bottom is your lowest hazard, which is everything else that's not listed above.
Honestly, it's very confusing to me because we're saying in the highest hazard location, the max coverage is gonna be $1 million.
Correct.
Am I right so far?
Mhm.
And there's a $500,000 deductible, and we have to wait 3 days to get a check.
That's correct. And that's pretty much what you're gonna find in any of these providers when it comes to flood insurance. That's so NFIP is National Flood Insurance Program. Again, any property, that's why I
Okay.
recommend that is where, and you're limited in coverage you can buy through the NFIP program, which is 500,000
Yeah.
per building, 250 for contents in that building. So again, if you want excess, this excess
Yes,
above and
okay.
beyond.
I think I understand it now. We're segregating the properties by the risk And then each of that pool of properties is gonna have a different deductible and a different length of time in order to get paid,
Correct.
from the insurance carrier.
That's correct.
All right, it finally sunk in.
No, understood.
Yeah, thank you.
If this was the first time flood was confusing, I'd be lying to you, because
Yeah.
that's the nature of flood insurance, and as soon as a new event happens, everything changes.
But, is there any appeal here relative to, they say it's in, a high risk, and we say, no, it's moderate risk because we're using the NFIP maps or the DNR maps?
Yeah, and that's why they invested their own, because they do not acknowledge those maps, and they rate them differently. So it is going to be different. If you look from here to Liberty Mutual, the current carrier, you're gonna find that the risk, a lot of the high-risk hazard they've determined might not be high-risk hazard for Liberty Mutual. They might be moderate risk. So, Chubb, flood is one of, Chubb's biggest areas of caution in coverage, and it's because of their loss experience in the line of coverage.
So if we sign up for this, we're signing up for that map.
And yes, in part, yes, you are accepting that map. That's correct. That's correct.
I mean, they're identifying, Main Street as a high hazard location.
Yeah, about
Am I
halfway
reading
down
that
there.
right?
West Fifth Street.
They're identifying
Or
Clifty
which
Drive
one?
as a high hazard location.
Greg, looking at this, the high hazard locations, there's several, I'm assuming those are lift stations? Like Grange Hall Road, West Highway 256, those
Right.
Jefferson County Sewer District, so, okay.
Also, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but our primary flood carrier is NFIP policies that we have. This would be in excess. Just wanted to make sure that was clear.
We're just trying to reconcile,
Yeah,
you know,
it's just not
why
our
the state
primary.
hospital would be a high hazard location based on their flood map. Because what it brings into question is, what the heck kind of flood map are they using where, the state hospital is a, high risk location, high hazard location for flooding?
You know, I think
Anyway.
that's,
Well, there is a, no, there's a, what's at the state hospital?
We have a,
We have lift stations and an incubation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we're talking about flooding.
yeah, I think one of the, to learn more and understand better is really a conversation for Chubb and their vendor that maps,
Okay.
you know, creates these maps for
All right,
them. That
sorry to
would be-
belabor that point.
No,
Yeah,
that's a great point. I mean, we live on a river, so it makes sense to me. It's a big risk, so absolutely. Anything else on flood at this point? Concerns?
Clear as mud.
Literally.
Yeah. No pun intended, right? The next page, 10, is gonna be what they call their property extension custom mark. Their limits here consistently are gonna, beat their competition, they always have. One thing I would kind of point, a couple actually, there's a $500,000 blanket of insurance. Again, this is on page 10. You're gonna see fine arts and valuable papers are two things on there that are picked up on that blanket. Some of the fine arts are scheduled specifically, some are not. There's a blanket here intended personal property, of the employees, for example, there's some coverage there. So it's multiple different items that they're covering there. And then that kind of extends to page 11 and 12 as well.
Greg,
Yes.
before we go any further, I had a question on the fine arts. What is considered fine arts? And the reason I ask that is the new sculpture that's gonna be placed up on the bridge, the entrance,
Sure.
where would that fall?
So that would likely be scheduled under property in the open, would be
Property.
the proper placement. It would depend on the carrier as well, because they all define those things differently in their forms, where the best rates are in coverage to protect those items. Again, this being on a fine arts property in the, or blanket limit, it's gonna pick up a lot of the things that aren't specifically scheduled. And so as those new public arts or fine arts pieces are acquired or insured, they would need to be added accordingly at that moment in time, to be sure that they're properly covered.
So while we're dealing with the new park, there's gonna be some art
Correct.
issues in there.
Mhm.
We can add those.
Correct. Again, it would be somewhat dependent upon what's the value of that item as we kind of assess the whole schedule that's there at the time. whether it's specifically scheduled or whether it falls underneath this blanket. And again, as that collection grows, we're going, and the value again of each specific item will dictate where it ends up being scheduled. But for example, flight down here at Bicentennial Park, or Bergman up at Sunrise, or any other piece that the city is responsible for insuring, those items should be specifically discussed and then placed accordingly in coverage.
Okay.
But again, this blanket is intended to pick up, and it's there for a reason. Your current limit's at 250, so again, they've doubled that coverage in just this one specific place, so.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm going to kind of jump on you to page 25, which is going to be the Trident, your liability carrier, the new carrier that's offering. And Trident's company is Argonaut. They've been around for a really long time. Program went away. It's since come back. So they've actually had applications on the city for 3 years in a row now. I have offered at different levels. Again, Liberty last year was the placement. But they've been competitive in pricing. There was a couple coverage lines that they weren't willing to offer. I think familiarity with the risk over those 3 years has brought them to now. Anytime they see an application and start learning more, it makes them more comfortable. The city's loss experience will certainly help that as well. So looking at that coverage line on page 25, I want to point out that in the general liability section, your employee benefits liability is being offered in the general liability under an occurrence form. The reason that's important, doesn't change the limitation of coverage, but it does require a tail coverage be purchased to protect the city because it's currently on a claims made form. So we'd recommend, and you'll see it in the summary, a 2-year tail coverage to pick up that exposure from the claim, going from claims to occurrence. So that's very important. So you don't lose that preceding coverage with employee benefits. When you talk, the other big difference in the general liability is the sexual abuse and molestation coverage currently and prior to this offer. Well, that's not true. They are sublimiting their coverage to $500,000 for that line of claim. Consequently, would not run through the umbrella of $4 million either. So they will be willing to consider it, but it is based upon application, which they provided. I think I have it in your folder there if you wanted to kind of see some of the questions that we asked them. But essentially, that's coverage that they're going to be looking for the recreational programs or just for the city employees in general. But that's where probably your highest exposure is in the parks department generally for that line of coverage. So I would advise that that is pursued at that $1 million limit if you choose to move to Trident and look at running that then once again back through the umbrella. This has been, well, for the 11 years I've been managing, this has been a coverage that has been kind of volatile. And the city, back when One Beacon insured them in originally 2015 and 16, they actually were offering a supplement at that time on that coverage, and the city sat down with Parks Department, reviewed it, and they got it to policy limit and through the umbrella. So again, that's kind of where they're reassessing as a new carrier, saying we need to see and understand this a little bit. So that's something to be noted. Any questions on the general liability or that employee benefits liability? On the public officials, you're actually gaining a better deductible. Currently, the city has purchased a $20,000 deductible, which was increased last year.
majority of the vehicles, you're actually gaining a lesser deductible than what's expiring. Again, 2,000 comp, 2,000 collision. If you look briefly at the next page 27 at the top, it's gonna kind of break that down. So all vehicles are at 1,000 and 1,000 except for the vehicles noted in the box below, which again are your higher value vehicles. Those are gonna carry a 2,500 comp, 2,500 collision. So that is 500 higher than what is on those vehicles currently. So you can garbage trucks, street sweeper, for example, fall under that $2,500 deductible. We go back to 26, just kind of to note some of the other differences. The Aaron's Fox, for example, is gonna carry $1,000 deductible comp collision, whereas right now, Liberty Mutual covers it with a $50 comp collision deductible, which is today's lowest. And then, so that's just that one vehicle specifically. The Seagrave, is at 2,500, which is actually beneficial to the city, currently it's at 10,000. So, there's a little bit of give and take there, the deductibles, but across the board, the city would gain a better deductible than what they have general and vehicle running across the schedule. Any questions? Okay. Moving to the excess, $4 million, so again, same as expiring. The liquor liability would run all the way through, so for the golf course exposure, and then it would include the, work comp carry underneath it as well. The only differences, again, I mentioned was on the abuse, this is on page 27, if you're looking for it, at the bottom. Would be the abuse and molestation, as I mentioned earlier, again, pending application, they'd be willing to consider going through that as well.
What was that last application you mentioned?
The abuse and molestation.
Oh, abuse and okay.
Liability.
Okay.
So without skipping over, those are the big difference. When we talk about cyber, I can get you to the page. There were two quotes accessed, and cyber has temporarily, and I'm cautious to say it has kind of tempered a little bit. It's a lot of the efforts of carriers and public entities and all the businesses that have kind of put the measures in place. I know the city's been very proactive there, in that effort. So, it has stabilized. You'll see the pricing came in with, HCC expiring
So the biggest increase in the different categories is general liability, almost a 50% increase there. What's the, going from 41,000 to 66,000? What's the big reason for that, and is there an opportunity to scale that back like we've done in previous years to, try to get some economy of that particular level of liability coverage?
So to answer the first question, social inflation is a term that's real hot in our business, which essentially, the way these claims are being settled on the liability side. So when you think about property inflation, we all understand the cost of everything's kind of gone up to repair and replace these buildings. But social inflation is what we're seeing as far as how these claims are being settled. So I don't, I know from my chair and seeing how these claims are going, the way in which they're being paid out, the legal defense costs that are incurred, all part of your loss, that's really what's driving the general liability. As far as the city's concerned, I mean, if you look at the next page, you see kind of loss history on page 30 outlined. Essentially in liability, 1920 and 21-22, kind of where they saw some loss activity. The property and the equipment, so again, if you see what Chubb's looking at today, is very, very good. So the year that just fell off was the hail year that the city experienced in property. So again, property and equipment is really very marketable. And the liability is as well, but there is just that hint that they see that gives them cause for, caution. And that's with every risk that I work with. So what was, what might have been a 5 or 10% increase in the past is now a 15 to 20% increase because of their reinsurance costs to insure these liability line of coverage. So again, they're buying the insurance at a much lower level a lot of times, and they're paying more for it. So their fear for those large losses is a lot greater in the public entity space than it once was. And I don't foresee that changing.
Greg, this, under the liability for the year 2019 and 20, now, did that drop off this year, or will that drop off next year?
That'll drop off next year.
311,
Yes.
okay.
And that, so, and this is kind of illustrates maybe that whole point. That claim's been developing from back then and is still an open claim that's driving the majority of that number. And so those claims take a long time before they develop and they're then settled. And so they're on the books of that particular period.
So one way to look at this, what you're describing, is that under the loss column, those are paid. However, there might still be outstanding claims that are maybe potentially being reserved for, and that's also being factored into the premium?
This includes the reserves, but there are a few claims out there that we anticipate to go over the current reserves because they're still fluid and there's still legal proceedings happening. And so, and one of those is in that 19 to 20 line that we're talking about. And so the carriers
Yeah.
understand this and know this, of course, because they're settling these claims and sending these claims. And so that's what kind of creates the volatility and the uncertainty. And when you pair that with the property challenges, again, the city has been very, very clean when you look at this.
Yeah.
But one big event, we've been fortunate here relative to, so there were $31 billion plus claims last year in the United States of America, which is kind of staggering to even think about. So obviously you kind of zero that down, but the weather catastrophic losses have been extraordinarily big versus historically what they've seen. So you kind of pair it up, and it's not just the property, it's not just the liability that's been impacted by all of this, it's everything. And fortunately, the cyber is tempered down, so we're not necessarily dealing with that today. So I hope it stays that way.
Interesting.
No day is a dull day in my life.
No.
It's very unprecedented. So kind of stepping back then to page 29, again, you can see, so property, when you add the two lines, kind of just walking through it, it actually was pretty tame compared to expiring, considering we have property inflation at where it's at. The crime has stayed steady. The GLs, you noted, Mr. Mayor, has gone up, and hopefully I've explained that well to understand why. It's not specific to the city, but entity or industry-wide. The liquor liability is included up in that general liability. Law enforcement, actually, this is something the city should be very proud of because a lot of these public entities that have any kind of
law enforcement liability issues, are typically buying the policy on its own monoline and carrying $250,000, $300,000 deductibles. So the city is not in that space, and as you can see, it's just barely a tick up in premium when you went from expiring. So that's wonderful. Commercial auto, they actually took a decrease from expiring, and that's actually with a couple additional vehicles versus this time last year. Public officials, just a small tick up. Employment practices is another volatile line, depending on the loss history, and the city has not had any of those claims to develop any loss. Went up a little bit. And the umbrellas, there was quite a bit of savings. So where you kind of picked up some of that increased liability costs in the general liability, they actually decreased their umbrella, which is essentially the part of that same exposure. And of course, from the Liberty Mutual offer, there's a big savings, of course. Cyber did not move, as I mentioned. Animal mortality is just due to the extra canine. And then the tail coverage is what I noted earlier for the employee benefits at that 2-year tail coverage. They offered it at a 1-year tail coverage, which just means it's going to pick it up for those 2 periods of time before the occurrence kicks in on its own. And employee benefits would be your handling of any benefits such as a health insurance program, 401 retirement accounts, etc., that an employee would make claim of mishandling. Any questions on?
Rating on Trident?
So
Chubb?
Trident is an A-minus rated carrier. You're gonna find that on page, see if I can find it here, page 34. It's gonna show the ratings of all these carriers. Chubb's A++, Travelers is A++, Argonaut / Trident is A-, HCC, your cyber carrier is A++, Glencar is the name on the animal mortality. Again, it's the same carrier, it's been sold a few times, is A+. And then the financial size of the carriers is right in the middle box there. Financial strength and size. I think just one kind of blanket, we've really changed with the market changes, our approach as far as marketing of accounts, whereas those long-standing 5, 3, 7-year relationships were pretty common and really typically in the best interest of a public entity to gain familiarity. That we hope we get back to that space, but these carriers are fighting to survive, frankly. I'm not saying that they're sorry for them, they create maybe their own challenges and so forth, but the current environment is very, very challenging. So we've been very, very fluid to market where we feel best. And like I said, we didn't intend to market this account because of all the marketing
Yeah.
for years, because you can become undesirable as a result of this. So we're very selective to do that. But obviously when we see the Liberty Mutual offer, one of the things we did at the very beginning, I wanted to touch back on, we kind of looked at how do we find some space and potentially move an extension of a date to bid on a different date for the city's benefit from budgeting,
Yep.
maybe planning. Create some space where, I joke, but I wasn't joking this year at renewal. I said I could have submitted applications in November and we'd be standing in the same space, which is true. But I would like to look at that for consideration next year. It was considered this year, but then found to be, it was not, obviously, just the movement from a carrier and extending of all these different policies seamlessly for the city's benefit is kind of where the challenge lies, as well as the budgetary factor there, taking on an extension.
You've done a good job outlining all of our coverages and the trends. Is there an emerging risk that you think we're exposed to that maybe not this year, but future years we're gonna have to, appropriate larger increases for the insurance?
I don't expect over the next 2 years to see this hard market soften. By all accounts, it's going to be, and so it's really from a lineup coverage perspective, you're probably looking at it unless something completely unforeseen like cyber was 10 years ago. That
You don't wanna say stabilize, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't wanna set the wrong expectation.
I think property inflation will still be there, it's tempering.
Yeah.
Social inflation is probably my biggest concern, just from the liability side of how these claims, what they're paying out at, and how long they're out there carrying over these public entities or whomever it is. The city's done an excellent job. Like I said, I wouldn't have the marketing capabilities we've had over the last 3 years if the city was not marketable. And there's a lot that are not. So, and that's with all these different lines of coverage we kind of talked about. There's a lot there. And, the auto is the loss leader for almost every public entity, and it's not the case for the city. When you kind of look at it, on its face. So,
Frankly, the driver behind the liability are people. It's juries, it's things like that. They drive.
I know, it's all
And
the,
at the moment, in the liability world, we are seeing higher than what would be usual verdicts. And so the insurance companies have to adjust accordingly. And so it's just reality at the moment. So it wasn't that way 6 years ago. It was different, but it's generally pretty cyclical.
yeah.
You also saying as the laws changed to where you could go maybe back 5 years with a lawsuit, and now they're extending this to go back to 10 years maybe on liability. That's, has to be bothering the insurance costs also.
Thank you, Greg.
thank you.
Many, what's our action today? Maybe come up.
Yes, our recommendation and request is that you approve us moving forward with the Chubb policy, going back with Chubb, Trident, and Travelers for the coverage.
Okay. Well, I will make the motion then for the board that we approve the proposal from Gardner Insurance Agency with the insurers Trident, Chubb, and Travelers. And it looks like that proposed annual premium is $368,946. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You need to be the signer on that.
And authorize me to sign
Yes,
once we
please.
concluded.
I'll second the mayor's motion.
Okay. Any discussion, comments, or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Rick.
board.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katrina. All right, thank you, everyone. I know that annual review is important. We work really hard to keep our insurance rates from exploding, so that's what Greg and Katrina help us do, because it's really, really complicated to get the coverage that we need with our claims, keep our claim history down, manage that as well, but also, work with other providers in the space to make sure that it's competitive. So thank you for that. We'll move on to PACE with Nicole.
Good afternoon. I would like to switch the agenda just a little bit and do the extension first, if that's okay.
Yep.
And John Musil is here representing Springdale Sanitary in case there are questions. They are asking for an additional 12 months on their dilapidated structures grant application. Their new deadline would be 1/17/2025. They have not received any payments, but they have started significant amount of work, and John's here if you have any questions on that.
John, I think it's an awesome project. Minnie and I had an opportunity to tour it with you. Would you mind giving the community a little overview of this and what the next steps are with Springdale?
First off, we'd like to thank the city for the PACE grant, because without that money, this project would not be able to proceed. The chapel was built in the 1920s, and so it's approaching 100 years old, and over time, the condition of the chapel went down due to a lot of factors: vandalism, difficulty keeping maintenance, and so on and so forth. It has stained glass windows, and there's 5 different stained glass windows. So what we're trying to do is to bring it back up to where it can be used as part of the function of the cemetery for burial services, memorial services, things like that. And in doing that, what we're doing is we're completely redoing all of the stained glass windows. Ron DeDeeg is doing that. That's the majority of the cost, and it's a slow process, and that's really why we're asking for the extension is that it's hard to find an artisan that can do that type of work and would stick with it. So she basically has 2 of the windows finished, and they'll be reinstalled here in the spring. And then she'll have the 3 other windows done this year. It's a little more, when I first started working on this, I just thought, oh, well, stained glass is, not such a big deal. Well, it is a big deal to find the artisan, but then you get into the other parts of the project where the framing of that's inside the window framing has to be reworked because it's rusted and can require welding, painting, sandblasting, and so on, and mortar joints around where the windows in over time have eroded. So that's the main project, is the stained glass windows and the entry door. But the other things is that the basement continues to fill up with water, so we're trying to come up with a better drainage system, put in sump pump and better guttering and things like that.
Is it a basement or a cellar, or, I mean, what, is there,
There's
there is a sub,
If you look at that picture,
Yes.
where the back window is, from there back is like a basement.
Okay.
So it's maybe a third of the dimension of the building. And I think that actually in the beginning, just kind of being down there and looking at it, is that they had some kind of either wood or coal type furnace down there, because you notice there's a chimney on the back side of the building. And so I think they were using it as a place to keep a heating system, whatever it might have been, most likely coal or wood at that time. Of course, that's not there anymore. And the problem with you don't see the topography, but the hillsides like this
Oh, yeah.
going down towards the back of the chapel, and water just runs through there like crazy. Plus, it's called Springdale because there's a lot of springs there. And so the basement, the third in the back, fills up with water, then it drains down to nothing and goes back. It's just a constant thing. So that's part of what needs to be rectified and fixed. But then the other things peripheral is that we gotta have better wiring on the inside, so we put in some heating and air conditioning for these type services and stuff in the future. So it's a slow go, and it's primarily in the beginning. I'm not blaming her, but it's that work is
it's meticulous work.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you personally and the board for caring for Springdale. It's an invaluable asset of the cities that's benefited the community for a very, very long time, and also caring about the preservation of this building. We're very happy to be part of it, of the preservation of the chapel there. It's beautiful.
Right. Well, we couldn't do it without the city's
Yeah.
help. The city provides a lot of, which is greatly appreciated, services to the cemetery that help do the maintenance and so on and so forth, and it's greatly appreciated. It is a very interesting history and asset to the city. Pretty soon, well, what peripheral is not involved with this, but we're also working on digitalizing the cemetery records, which is a big job. But one of the things that happened in that is that in this mapping, they've done a complete drone flyover visual of the cemetery, because then they overlay that over mapping for record keeping and stuff. But they're really spectacular pictures. When they did the drone imagery, it was in the fall. The colors were out. I mean, it's just coincidental, but that was nice. And so that'll be on our Facebook site here in the next few weeks, I hope.
And the interment of there's veterans there. Has all of those graves been marked and identified with the veteran that's there?
Well, there's a veterans section
Veterans
that's
section.
identified, which is started about Civil War era time. Veterans there. If you go all the way to the west end, to out there where the old gate is, and if you look, before you say you were 25 yards from that point, to the right there is the veterans sections, and there's rows of veterans type stones primarily there, but there are Civil War era veterans in that section, and then up into more modern times. And of course, Bachman's buried there. And, anyway, a lot of history.
Well, a lot of work that you're doing there, so I appreciate it, and I'll make the motion to grant the extension with the new deadline being January 17th, 2025. Wish you luck. Any discussion, comments, or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? John,
Really
thank you.
appreciate
Keep up the
your
good
help.
work.
Thank
Yep.
Moving on, I have several applications for you to start the new year. First application is 127 St. Michael's Avenue. This property is unique because while it hasn't been deemed unsafe, the entrance into it is relatively unsafe with the retaining wall that's holding up the property starting to deteriorate to the point where it could collapse onto the sidewalk. We're presenting this to you for formal approval. There were some issues in inaccuracies in the scoring of this application. So at the PACE committee, it did not meet the minimum score. However, we believe because of some issues with the scoring early on in the meeting, first of the year,
But if you average the other remaining scores,
Yes.
it would
it would
reach-
have scored
Yeah, okay.
correctly, yes.
All
So we're asking for the approval of $5,800 on her application.
Okay.
And since that one is unique, we'd probably need to split that one out from the others, if that's okay.
Do that. Move that we approve the requested PACE grant for 127 St. Michael's Avenue.
I'll second the mayor's motion.
Any discussion? Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. The next application is 417 West Second Street. Application for a rehabilitation grant for $7,500. This work includes restoring the front porch to its original design. The current porch is non-compliant with current standards, but they're going to go back to more of a traditional style wood railing and columns there. The next application is 209 East First Street, another rehabilitation grant asking for $7,500. This work includes installing smart siding over the entire house and painting that. It currently has vinyl siding, but they're wanting to go with a more historic look, which is a good improvement.
Will that be on the back side?
The entire structure.
The entire structure?
I believe Bob's reviewed all these, so I'm gonna go forward, and if he has questions, I can go back. The next application is 119 East Street, a rehabilitation grant for the amount of $7,190.40. This work includes the restoration of their windows all over the house. There's 6 total windows. They're gonna also repair the shutters and reattach them and add storm windows. Next application is 614 West Second Street, a rehabilitation grant for the amount of $5,725. This work includes replacement of these deteriorated front porch posts. They're gonna match the existing, but they're just too far deteriorated in order to repair them. Next application is 414 Elm Street, a rehabilitation grant for the amount of $3,605. This is another porch railing replacement. The current concrete and railing of this home is deteriorated. They're gonna go back with a more historic looking railing of wrought iron, which was acceptable by PACE and Historic Board. Next application is 824 West 3rd Street, a rehabilitation grant for the amount of $7,500. Their work includes both work on the home as well as the carriage house. Work on the home includes chimney repairs, some painting, some window restoration, some gutter soffit and downspouts. The carriage house will receive repairs to the front doors, windows, and then possibly some fence repairs on site. The next two are identical as it's a duplex, 723 West 3rd and 725 West 3rd. Both are asking for $7,500 on each half, which, since it's a duplex, is acceptable. They are on separate parcels. Both are going to receive rebuilt front porch as well as smart siding on both halves.
So assuming new exterior paint as well?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. The next application is 513 West Street. This is a dilapidated structures grant asking for $25,000. This had previously received a rehabilitation grant by a previous owner to do most of the exterior work, but when the new owners got into it, there's pretty extensive damage on the interior, so most of the work will include interior repairs, including drywall, ceilings, rewiring, that kind of thing. There are some structural issues, but it's primarily on the next half, which I'll go over now. So the next application is 515 West Street. The other half of that duplex is also a dilapidated structures grant for $25,000. This half is more extensively damaged as far as structural, so they're going to be fixing that as well as dealing with the other interior elements such as rewiring and finishes.
It's a really good example that many of these properties don't age well. They don't get better with time. So I'm really happy we have investors who are spending significant resources to bring these structures back to life and into an inhabitable nature. And we're happy to be part of the preservation of them.
Next application is 811 East 1st Street, a rehabilitation grant for $7,500. Their work includes gutters and downspouts, working on siding, and then also working on the wood trim all over this property.
Will the exterior be painted?
I believe so, because they mentioned siding in here, but I believe they had already started that work. But yes, they do have paint listed.
And the only reason I'm asking, because I know that we talk about this a lot, which is, by the time this property's done, it should have really good curb appeal and not look like it did at the start if it's utilizing PACE grant funds for exterior improvements.
Yes, they did list paint in there as
Okay.
well. Next application is 517 Mulberry Street, a rehabilitation grant for $7,500. Their work includes brick restoration, restoring the front door and transom, and dealing with some areas of the foundation along the coal chute, which is pictured there. They've also got a few windows that they need to work on as well.
Now, are they going to paint this, or once the brickwork is done, they just go back to natural?
It's not listed on here, but I believe they discussed painting, but I don't have the full application in front of me. next application is 409 East Second Street. This is a rehabilitation grant for $7,500. Their work it includes removing 34 windows and replacing them with aluminum clad windows that were approved by both PACE and Historic Board. Next application is 745 West Third Street, a rehabilitation grant for $7,500. This work includes dealing with the side porch, both ceiling, floors, post and handrails, as well as fixing some of the issues around their windows.
I love the fact that we continue to see investment, because that is one of our targeted revitalization areas, isn't it?
It is not, but we've had quite a bit come through
Thought
on
it was.
that one. Just Walnut Street
Okay.
downtown.
Okay.
But it was originally a
But we've
target
had a lot of
area.
investment on West Third Street that's improving that street as well.
Yes. Next application is our first dangerous structures grant of the year. 308 Elm Street suffered a fire as shown in the pictures. They're asking for the $10,000. Yeah, 10,000 to remove the structure. She will rebuild according to the requirements of the structure, but that 10,000 is just to tear down that structure. And the final application is our first Hilltop, 1805 Orchard Street. It's a dilapidated structure. They're asking for $25,000. It's in pretty deteriorated condition, so they're going to fix all of the interior structural issues, work on the stone exterior, and then frame new walls, add plumbing and drywall and electrical. I believe they're going to turn this into apartments is the
I can't
goal
really
here.
tell, but is that all brick?
It is, yes, I believe so. There might be some stone foundation, if not stone on the back, but I believe it is all brick.
Again, just please, understand what the exterior is gonna look like when they're done, because it really shouldn't look like the beginning.
Right, yeah, and they're
It should be
planning a
light,
full
bright,
exterior
cleaned up,
restoration on this.
landscaping, painting, trim, roof.
Yeah.
Whatever is dilapidated about it, it shouldn't look dilapidated once we invest
Yeah.
$25,000 in the structure with them.
And that is all the applications I have for you.
So what do we have, six? We already approved ones.
Yeah.
16?
16, yes.
16 applications requesting $174,820
That's with the one you approved earlier, yes.
with the one that we approved earlier, and approximately $683,000 projected to be spent by the property owners, which I think those are always low numbers because we're probably not including getting it all the way to inhabitability.
Correct.
Almost a 4-to-1 ratio, and preserving, like I said, 16 or 17 structures, 4 of which are either dilapidated or dangerous.
Yes.
Sounds like a good first quarter to me.
I make a motion, we approve the request, 16 requests.
I'll second it. Any discussion, comments, or questions? Hearing none? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. What's the second quarter shaping up to look like?
We're currently accepting applications. That deadline is February 5th. I already have, I believe, 3 applications for the next quarter.
It'll pick up as we get into warmer weather as well, and appreciate the Redevelopment Commission and City Council support for this program, and most importantly, all the investors out there and property owners who are investing in bringing these properties back to life. This fits very nicely into our blight elimination and program, That has made a big difference over the course of the last several years, but Dewey's done a fantastic job on code enforcement, as well as Brian over there with our building inspector. So we appreciate all the community's involvement in this program, because this is what is making Madison clean, safe, and beautiful.
Thank you.
Anything else, Nicole?
No, that's it.
Fantastic. Moving on, I have on here DuPont Water Company versus City of Madison update for the board. I know a couple of months ago, we presented to you an update on the Moody Park lawsuit. If you recall, Moody Park, last March, I believe, the board issued an order for the removal or demolition of 7 of the uninhabitable, unsafe structures in Moody Park. 3 have been voluntarily removed. We're continuing to work through court, and then the update we gave the board a couple of months ago was there's going to be a mediation period that'll take us probably till the end of March, maybe, Joe? But that's been ongoing for about a year. Another lawsuit that's been ongoing now for, will be a year in March, is the complaint that DuPont Water Company filed against the City of Madison, claiming that it was infringing on their exclusive water territory relative to providing, mainly the issue was providing water and fire suppression services to the new $45 million Jefferson County jail facility. The jail project had been going on probably for about 4 years, under construction for a little over 2. And during that period of time, Jefferson County had solicited both the City of Madison and the town of DuPont for quotes relative to the water and fire suppression services that were needed there. City of Madison promptly responded. Town of DuPont did not. The jail construction is complete. It's operating. All the administrative and inmates have been transferred to the new jail. And last March, as I said, DuPont filed the complaint. City of Madison has filed a motion to dismiss that has not been ruled on. And now we're going back and forth with some discovery and potential settlement discussions. Nothing's been resolved, and City of Madison still contends that DuPont does not have the infrastructure to actually provide the water and fire suppression services to the jail. Jefferson County had asked the City of Madison to allow it to connect to the City of Madison's water system, which we did. And in the damages from DuPont, they've claimed legal fees and lost revenue. So that matter will continue to evolve until either it is ruled upon by the judge or settled. But City of Madison continues to contend that DuPont does not have the infrastructure they claim to have, and so that is the core basis for the dispute. And so far, DuPont has not been able to prove otherwise. Joe, anything to add there? Any questions, board? No. We'll continue to keep you informed. If there's anybody that lives in DuPont and they want more information on this, please attend a DuPont Water Company board meeting and ask the directors of the board for some more detail. Before I move into the mayor's comments, I'd like to invite Chief Scudder, who is present, if he'd like to give some remarks to the Board of Public Works today, and also introduce the new major.
How's everybody doing?
Good morning.
For anybody that hasn't
afternoon,
met,
should say.
Major Rick Munt, he's here with me today. So he's stepping into his role and learning what his responsibilities and stuff are. He might be regretting it after sitting here for an hour and a half.
We normally don't get both the chief and the major at a meeting like this, so we feel very important today. Thank you.
Privilege.
Aside from that, we're just trying to get everything figured out still. We've got a lot of stuff on the plate. We had a department meeting last Wednesday where we rolled out any changes that we're making or stuff that's going on in the department. So we're just still trying to get our legs under us and get it all figured out, but everything's going pretty smooth.
Good. Well, thank you, Chief, and thank you, former Captain and now Major Munt, with his 28 years of service to the community. Now moving into a new role, we will give Major Munt the oath of office tomorrow night at the City Madison City Council meeting. So we'll look forward to that.
Awesome.
Anything else to add, Chief? I know that your phone's probably been ringing off the hook. You know, the concerns of the community relative to public safety have not slowed down any.
Exactly.
We continue to work very hard, as you know, together on making sure our community is safe, and we have some very ambitious lots of aspirations for continuing to improve community safety throughout 2024 and the next several years. So I appreciate working with you too.
Yep. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, Cap. And just under Mayor's comments, I'll mention that to the board, at the next Board of Public Works and Safety meeting, we will be introducing a resolution for the board to review new rates for our transfer station operation. We mentioned several years ago that was an operation that needed to be modernized, similar to water and sewer, what water and sewer has been over the last few years. So we're finalizing that rate study as well as the modernization of plants and equipment and bringing in efficiency, updating the rate structure so that the operation can be sustainable, adding new technology, equipment, and plant improvements, as well as focusing on the safety of our TSO workers. So we'll introduce that here at the next Board of Public Works meeting, which will be a kind of a prelude to starting the process with City Council as well. And in February, we'll also have another busy month because we will continue to identify ways to enhance our efforts for blight elimination. We made a lot of progress in the last several years. I think in the first 2 years now that Dewey's been here, it's been well over 700 cases that have been adjudicated in one way or another, most of which have been owner abated, which is what we like. But we'll also be introducing new policies and tactics to deal with vacant and abandoned property, which is scattered all across the city and is creating a blighting, unsafe influence in many of our neighborhoods. So we'll continue to deal with that, but that's going to involve some new policies and procedures to elevate our blight elimination tactics. And then finally, I just want to thank all of the first responders for the early morning fire on Magnolia Avenue. I know that we had a total loss of a structure there, but everyone was safe. Our firefighters and all the responders, battled engulfed structure in freezing temperatures, and this is what these guys train for every day. So I'm very grateful for all of that, and I think there were probably other emergency responses across the community. I just highlighted one, but I want to thank our volunteer firefighter community for all that they do when they're not responding. They're training, and John, you're part of that as well. Thank you for all of your involvement. These two guys are both members of the 3s and the 4s, but thank you for your service to the community. Anything else you want to add before we move on? Now, if there's anybody here who would like to address Board of Public Works and Safety, please come to the podium, identify your name, address, and your remarks. And our next meeting will be Monday, February the 5th. We do have a City Council meeting tomorrow, where we'll be talking about several things. Anybody? Hearing none? Have a
Mayor,
motion to-
I'd just like to give a shout out to our street department. Friday, with the amount of snow that we had, by Friday evening, the main streets and most of the side streets, I think, were clear. And I think they've done a tremendous job with the amount of snow that we had. So I'd just like to give them a shout out. So.
Yeah, good point. The weather certainly brings its own challenges, but it doesn't matter what the weather is. Our guys, our staff, our men and women, whatever department it is, water, sewer, police, fire, central dispatch, EMS, our paper boys, our linemen, I mean, and our newspaper carriers, they're all out there doing their jobs. And that keeps the lights on and keeps the city moving, so I appreciate each and every one of them.
Make a motion with adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. We'll
Second.
see you, Monday, February the 5th. All in favor, please, aye? Aye. Any opposed? Thanks. Joe, you got 1 minute before you go?